This is the Teacher Talking Time podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Teacher Talking Time podcast. I'm going to be your host today, but I'm not going to be alone because I am once again, as has become customary in December, I am joined by the other two musketeers, Andrew and Mike. How's it going, boys?
What's going on?
What's up? What's up? The countdown is on to 2023.
Exactly.
I don't remember how the Three Musketeers thing came along, but people seem to like it. It's not like a running joke. Every time I talk to somebody, like, "Oh, you're one of the Musketeers." I'm like, "Well, I don't know, but I don't know how we started that." But
we're almost like a Russian doll set too, if you think about it physically. How we go from tallest to shortest. Yeah,
right. Well,
we could brand this stuff.
I think it has to do with the fact that everything that we do in terms of our business is also in trees. Like, all of our courses have 3 letters. They're part of an acronym, like TAP,
that's true.
TSN, TBL, SPA,
Be really clever if we said that we did that on purpose, but I don't think we did that on purpose.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So
there's the power of
as
3.
usual. Yeah, there's a power of 3. Yeah. But what I was gonna say is, it has become some sort of tradition for us that in December we kind of audit, we go back and we reflect on what happened in this past year. In the past, we've done episodes where we've talked about things that we've learned from podcast episodes. We've talked about, word of the year, and we've done all kinds of things. Maybe we can do that in January. I guess that would be a good thing for January. But for today, I had a surprise up my sleeve. I wanted to surprise you guys with something different and something that I think it would be somewhat useful for those of you who are actually watching or listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe, because our YouTube channel next year is going to be revamped, and we're going to be adding a lot more videos, I guess, to YouTube.
I think this is where we would say, hit that subscribe button.
Exactly.
Smash that subscribe button. Yeah.
My kids make fun of me sometimes. He's like, "Are you going to become a YouTuber?" I'm like, "No, I'm just going to record YouTube videos, but that doesn't mean I'm going to become one." But
it's going to be fresh, though. It is going to be fresh. We've got lots of ideas, not just like this where we're talking about issues, but actual real practical stuff that you can apply to your teaching business and daily practice.
So what I was thinking, boys, for today, for this last episode of the year, I was thinking that we could actually talk about lessons that we've learned in 2022, because the year is basically over and it's been a wild ride. So I thought it would be a good idea, or it would be a good podcast idea for us to talk about lessons we've learned in 2022. And the rationale behind this is that if we keep these lessons in mind, they will help us avoid falling into the same old cycles and propel us into a better future, perhaps.
Knock on wood.
Yes. And it's funny because, again, the idea of falling back into the same old cycles is actually going to be the first lesson that we're going to be talking about today. But what's interesting to those of you who are listening to this episode is that Mike and Andrew don't know what the lessons are.
No idea.
But I feel like these are lessons that are somewhat applicable to our lives. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the lesson out there, and you guys can think about how this lesson relates to your life, to your business, to things that you have done this year. So
you know how I feel? When you watch like Jimmy Fallon or something, and he's saying this to the guest, like, I have a surprise for you, and we're going to do this game where you're going to... This must be how the guest feels, because I'm like a little bit anxious and nervous. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So
luckily we don't have millions of people listening.
Yeah. So that's the idea. The past few years, I would say I think this is the 3rd year of the pandemic, if you ask me. So the past few years have been quite intense for everyone, and as we know, the pandemic has affected everyone on a massive global scale, both internally and externally. Although things have slowed down this year, it can be very easy for all of us to feel lost in some sort of a whirlwind of events or emotions. So grounding ourselves and reflecting on what we have experienced so far in 2022, I think it's a great way for us to end another year of podcasting for us. So, to those of you who are listening, to Mike and Andrew who are here participating in this podcast as well, here are our top 22 lessons learned up until today. So I'm going to start with lesson number 1. Okay. So lesson number 1, boys and girls, is a very simple one. So I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to give you some background to that lesson, I should say. And then I want you guys to talk briefly about each of them. And we can kind of like relate them to what's happening in our lives and everything. We just have to keep it short because we have 7 lessons.
Well, I thought you said 5.
They said 22.
5. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we could do 12 lessons if we wanted to.
New math, Andrew.
Yeah.
That's lesson 1.
That's lesson 1. Maybe we'll do 7. We'll do 7 because the last lesson is going to be an individual one. You're going to have to reflect on what was a personal lesson for you after we talk about the first 6. So we'll do 7 in total. So lesson number 1, it always takes longer than you think it's going to take. And let me give you guys a little bit of background while you're thinking about that. That is actually a lesson that I've learned after working on very long-term projects. One of them, of course, being TAP, which we have been working on for over a year now. But this is actually Hofstadter's law. And I was thinking about this, and this is a lesson that I've learned about exercising. You know, like we always think that it's going to take us like maybe 3 months to get in shape. We always think that, right? But it always takes longer than you think it's going to take. So if you think in your head it's going to take me 3 months, think again. So from the moment we decided to start this company, this new program, the TAP, everything has taken longer and been much harder than we expected. So the lesson for me based on this is if we can't pass the marshmallow test of delaying gratification, which is something that you were talking about earlier today, Mike, if we can't pass this marshmallow test of delayed gratification, which is something that we have been experiencing with the podcast, and deferring things into the future, we're just going to get crushed. What do you guys think?
Mike, go for it.
Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah, I agree. I agree that things inevitably do take a little bit longer than others, than expected. But I would say that there are steps along the way, right? So, for example, one part of this is that you need to realize that iteration is at play, right? So, for example, the reason we don't lose weight in those 3 months is because we inevitably, say 2 weeks into, say, a workout, decide to tweak it or change it or make it a little bit better, right? The reason we don't get that course up and running right away is because we start to make it, we realize that it's good or bad, and we make some revisions based on that. And it's just this constant ongoing iterative approach that takes a little bit longer than expected. Having said that, I think the counter argument would be don't let perfection be the enemy of progress, right? So yes, we're not really getting all of it done on time, but at the same time, if we just change our expectations or tweak a little bit along the way, we're still making progress in the right direction. And I think that maybe is a little bit more important than meeting the absolute final deadline.
Yeah.
Well said. It's hard to disagree with that. You know, things take longer than you think. I mean, you started talking about it's year 3 of the pandemic. I don't think anyone really thought it would be 3 years.
Right. When it started, we thought it was going to be like a month. Yeah.
And then it was a month. You know, I don't think anyone actually thought it would be 2 weeks either, though. So I think it goes both ways. It's interesting. Like, exercise, a good example. You know, you want to write a book, writing anything, that's a good example. You know, what would be the opposite is kind of where my mind goes. Like, what would take a shorter amount of time than you think? And is it a matter of just perspective? Is it something that we want, that we have to build, that we're striving towards, that takes longer? And if so, you know, the reflection on why is it being delayed? you know, pandemic aside, it's not in our control. But like if I'm writing a book, that's basically 99% in my control. I either sit down and write, or I don't. So if I'm not, why am I not doing it? And I also think with gym and most things, like non-defined goals, right, help or hinder that. So you said, Leo, help, it takes longer to get in shape than we think. But what does it mean to get in shape? Like that's not a goal. That's not right. I mean, it's a goal, but it's not defined. It's not quantifiable.
Right? It's not smart, right?
It's not smart, right? Writing a book, okay, but then you compartmentalize it. And I'm going to write a page today. I'm going to write a second page tomorrow. Okay. And if you didn't do that, why not? But it shouldn't take you longer than X amount of time. So a couple hours or half a day to write one page per se, right? So then you can reflect. Don't, like we always say, if the goal is to climb the mountain, that's great, but don't stand at the bottom of the mountain and look at the top, walk 100
there's a lot of
feet,
connections now. There are a lot of
walk
connections
100
with
feet
all
and
the
then look
lessons.
back, it's good to know where you're heading ultimately, but know that when you climb the mountain, to extend that analogy, like there's going to be, the path might not always be there. Like you're going to have to climb over a rock or move the rock or something that will delay your progress, and that's okay. But quantifiable goals, I think, is important for me. So instead of getting in shape, it's I want to lose 5 pounds in 30 days. Okay. Then you can actually implement a plan to actually move forward with that.
Well, what if, and those grander plans as well will change over time as well, right? So if you set out to lose, 5 pounds today is a short kind of immediate, 5 pounds in the first 30 days is a short immediate goal. But if your larger goal is to lose 50 pounds, then how you get there and how intense you decide to attack that mountain is going to change as certain things in your life change. Like you might start working out, hurt your knee, and realize that you have to now switch to low impact workouts, or offset that with reducing your caloric intake, right? Like, so the journey itself is kind of evolving as well along with you.
Or you might get halfway up the mountain and be like, you know what? This mountain's not for me anymore. And that's okay too.
So I think you guys, this is the beautiful thing about all of these lessons, is that they are somewhat all kind of connected. So I was going to go in order, like lesson 1, lesson 2, but I feel like you guys have already touched on lessons 5 and lesson 6.
Look at us.
This is how Jimmy
Fallon. Let that be a lesson to you. Be careful what you ask.
Yes. So I'm going to jump into lesson 5 then, which is very much related to what you said, Andrew. You have to know what success looks like.
You're using your dogma approach with this podcast.
Exactly. And we decided that for us, at least, when we think about ourselves as a company, we decided that success was going to become more community minded, becoming more responsible as human beings, becoming better organized as a company, having more fun doing what we do. And of course, I actually think that we are really trying to make a positive contribution in the lives of many teachers who want to have a better life, who want to make a little bit more money, who don't want to, deal with burnout and work for institutions or for places where they don't feel like they are valued. So that's the lesson number 5. Know what success looks like. What do you guys have to say about that?
I'd like to jump in because I think we talk about this in our program. When you're defining success, it's important to be as specific and as detailed as possible. And there's this kind of concept in psychology where you kind of you look at your envisioned future self and your ideal self down the road, and the way to make that exercise as powerful as possible is to be as detailed as possible. So sure, success might be making X amount of dollars or getting paid a certain rate. But what is that leading to? Well, why do you need that money, right? Well, you need that money because you want to have enough time to not need a second job, or you want to have enough money so that you can have more free time to go out and spend time with your family. Okay, if you're with your family, what are you doing with them? Oh, we're traveling to Disneyland. Great. how many times a year are you getting to Disneyland? How long are you staying there? And it's really, really important to get as specific as possible, because that's going to help you stay on track. So now it's not just a case of getting to a point where you are making a certain amount of dollars. It's also assuming a new identity and a new lifestyle along with it. And if you're going to achieve these long-term goals, you need to have that clear vision, because you need to have something to, as you say, Leo, you need to have something to keep coming back to and referring and auditing, right? What am I doing now that's getting me to that future self that I really want to be?
I love that.
I think it can be human nature. It might sound counterintuitive, but like to be afraid of success or to be intimidated by success. Because to take the step forward to succeed, failure happens along the way. And there's this, a fear of failure that is in all of us, and it makes us go outside of our comfort zone.
Or at least, what if I fail, right?
Or what if, or what does it, and then, but then
what
I
if,
go back to the same thing. Like, what is the quantifiable? Like, what does that actually mean? Like, well, what specifically are we afraid of? What would that, if that, okay, I'll play along. If that does happen, what would happen next? What would happen in that situation? And we always, if we talk it out, we figure out it's not going to be as bad as we think it could be. I think it was Churchill, but it could have been somebody else. I could be wrong. But that quote about the anticipation of death is worse than death itself, right? Where we get in our own heads and we think about all the things that could go wrong. And if it actually happens in real life, it's not as bad as we imagine it that it could be. So achieving success, of course, is great. But I think a lot of people, myself included, don't take a step because, well, what if it doesn't work or it couldn't work out? And, kind of rob ourselves of even little wins along the way.
You already touched on another lesson, by the way, just by saying that.
Am I winning?
And having contingencies in place, right? So it's yeah, sure, I might not be successful right away, but if I experience this failure or this hurdle, this is how I'm going to respond, right? So when I don't feel like typing, what am I going to do that's going to get me in the mood to type, right? Oh, I'm going to stare at my computer and I'm going to try and write one word in a minute. And then if I write one word in a minute, I'm going to stay there for another minute and I'm going to try and write two more words. And then I'm going to stay there for another minute and write until you get to that. What's that magic number, Leo? 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that. It only takes 5 minutes to break the cycle. It's like 5 minutes of exercise and you're right back on the path. 5 minutes of writing and your book is moving forward again. 5 minutes of conversation with your partner and the relationship is somewhat restored. It doesn't take much to gain that momentum back. But because we are I feel like we just focus too much on intensity and not so much on consistency. Like I find that for me, what works is I just have to show up every day. Like today, I only read 2 pages of my books. 2 pages. It's pathetic. But 2 pages every day is better than no pages.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not pathetic when, well, you can assess how it is for you, but like, for you showed up, you went. The goal isn't to read 2 pages per day. The goal is
I always want to read more. The
goal is to read every day.
The goal is to read every day. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you know what success looks like. And it's funny because earlier on, Andrew was talking about mountains, and this segues very nicely into lesson number 6. You've already mentioned lesson number 4, so we're not going in order here. So I apologize for that. But lesson 6 is exactly what you were saying, Andrew. That behind mountains are more mountains. And that's just how life is.
Or should be, right?
Or should be. I think that's just how life is, actually, Mike. I think there's a book that I finished reading recently called The Second Mountain by David Brooks. And I think it's a phenomenal read. Maybe we should link the book into the show notes. But you don't overcome one obstacle. You don't just get through the first year of your business like we did, and then suddenly we were magically done with all obstacles, right? Oh, that's it. There's nothing more. No, that's not how life works. Life is basically, I don't want to go into Siddhartha and Buddhism here, but life is suffering. Life is one obstacle after another, and you just have to keep going, which is kind of what we have been doing. We have had times when we're like, man, there goes another mountain. When we finish the first iteration of TAP, we're like, this is great, but now there's another mountain. We want to make this program even better. The same thing with the podcast, the same thing with everything that we have done in this business. And it's the same thing that happens with life. Like, Andrew, you just recently became a house owner.
Mm-hmm.
That's you've already climbed that mountain. Now there are going to be more mountains after that.
Burnishing it.
Debt mountain. That's what it is. Mount debt.
But Leo, like, and this is big with education, right? It's not struggle. It's just like in education, there's not gaps. These are all opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So we started the business. We got to a certain point, and then we had the opportunity to pivot and do something different that was more meaningful to us. Was it a challenge? Yes, but it was an opportunity to grow. Andrew got a new house. Yes. So now he has the opportunity to build his credit, right?
Yes.
So that's to buy a
bigger house down the road, right?
Yeah. Don't look at it as debt.
No. But that's it, right? Like it's I agree with what you're saying. We're not saying that it's struggle all the time, but it's opportunities to keep this endless pursuit of development and growth, and
it's a matter
opening
of
new doors.
Perspective, right? Like, I think about retired people. Have you met a person who retired and then just sat on the couch for the rest of their life for the next 20 years? Probably not. They get bored because they're people. They need a challenge. They need something to do, right? A hobby or whatever it is. When people give up, I feel like it's because of insecurity. It's they already at the start feel like they're not able or not capable, and therefore the first iteration of trying to do that and it doesn't go well, it is their own confirmation bias that they already thought they couldn't do it. Versus, like, if you are a good person at working out, and just for whatever reason you had a bad month, you didn't work out at all, and you go back the next month and you start again, you're not going to give up after the first day, even though it's going to hurt, because you already know that you can do this. Versus if you've never worked out in your whole life and you go to the gym day one and it hurts, you're going to be, maybe you're like, well, I don't want to go back tomorrow because that was really unpleasant, because you already thought, I'm not a gym person, quote unquote, whatever that means. And you're just convincing yourself it's your insecurity about that activity.
Yeah.
And just to jump in, it goes back to the other problem, the other challenge that Leo was talking about, and that is that some people just don't have that confidence. Like, they don't get past the what ifs. And people in our program, the ones that are successful, are the ones that are that first case, Andrew. They realized that they had to take a month off. They realized that they were unable to do what they needed to do that particular month or week, but they still showed up the week after, because they knew as long as they keep being consistent enough, as Leo was saying, that eventually they will get back on the cycle, and then they'll be successful. What I find that we help people with the most in the Teacher Accelerator program is helping them get at least to that point, because there are a lot of teachers out there who have great ideas for courses, who really, really have great ideas for a business and a new way of life for themselves, but they're as you said, confirmation bias. They keep telling themselves, I could do this, but what if it doesn't work? And then what? Or I could do this, but what if I create a course and nobody buys it, right? Or so it's this endless what if cycle. And I think sometimes you just need people like you and Leo and I to just be in their corner and help them get over that initial mountain, and show them that once you've had that success, you're good to go.
This segues very nicely into lesson number 4. So, Mike,
nobody knows the order, by the way, Leo. So you're the only one. So you can
points for you and points for Andrew for having, like, this is the amazing thing about actually using or doing a podcast using a dogma approach. Like, we didn't plan this, but you are kind of like it's a choose your own adventure type of podcast, and in a way, you guys are actually able to talk about the lessons that we've learned without me telling you what those lessons were, which is fantastic.
Can we go back to lesson before we do lesson 4? Arbitrarily number 4.
We did lesson 1.
Arbitrary 4,
yeah. No, they have numbers. I numbered them because I was gonna do them in order in my head, which is like very much, this is the teacher in me, right? I'm gonna start by doing this, then I'm gonna do that. But then I realized that this is actually a very good example of how Dogme works with podcasting. How to podcast unplugged. You have an idea of what you want to do, and you have a set order in your mind. But then the moment the conversation starts, you just find yourself kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to ditch the plan.
You need to be a scientist,
It's
right?
like
Isn't that what it
it's
is?
from going from the synthetic syllabus of
Yeah.
point A, then point 2, right?
No,
And then
we're not following that
versus
anymore.
the deep end approach.
Exactly.
Right? Tell me what you know.
But
So
what is
lesson
funny
one
is
was
that,
success, right? Was it success? Lesson one?
lesson one is it always takes longer than you think it's going to take.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
That led us to lesson 5, which is knowing what success looks like,
Okay.
which then brought us into lesson 6, which was behind mountains are more mountains. And then you guys were talking about this idea of like how teachers are very hesitant and how a lot of people are very
People are
hesitant
hesitant. Not just
People are
teachers.
hesitant. Yeah.
People, not just teachers,
They
people.
they come down with severe cases of the what ifs.
Analysis. That's exactly what prompted me to get into lesson 4 now, because what is the solution to this problem? What is a lesson that we have learned as teachers, as human beings, as teacherpreneurs in our lives in 2022? Is that to always think of something as an experiment. How are you going to know if it's something that you want to do if you haven't tried doing it? I find that the decision to see something as an experiment, not as a permanent life choice, is very freeing. And I feel like for me, and this is an idea that I got from you, Andrew, the idea of dating, and I want you to explain that. Dating a niche, dating a
profile student,
profile,
not a real
whatever,
student,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
But
But just the idea, like the idea of thinking of something as an experiment, it allows me to go into it knowing that I was going to commit it for like a period of time, and then I can reassess and I can change my mind. So that I feel like it happened with me working for this project in Turkey. It happened for me with Learn Your English when we were like, well, let's commit to this for a period of time, and then we can reassess and then we can change our mind. So that's lesson number 4. What do you guys think?
I like it. I'll go first on this one because I was going to say, I think as we're talking, we're kind of coming to a definition of what success means or what to be successful means. And maybe it's not that ultimate climb the mountain, that can be a goal, right? But maybe to be successful or success just means every day I do this little action. And as long as I show up every day, that's success. And we know how actions compound, right? That's why people invest because over time, we had Nicola Apprentice give a talk earlier this year. And you're not going to see gains on investments in the short term, but everyone does it. Why? Because we know over the long term, if it shows up every day, so to speak, you see the results, right? So why don't we apply that to other things? I think it goes back just to those insecurities that we have. Going outside of our comfort zones is hard. So sometimes we need a little push, but we can make it easier for ourselves by saying, today I'm going to this and tomorrow I'm going to do the same thing. If I do it for 7 days in a row, that's a success. So it's just doing it on a daily basis.
We used to work with a yoga instructor, Heather, and I was talking to her once about weight loss. We'll just return to weight loss for a second. And her advice was just like, just do something, right? Like all you really need to do to lose weight is to choose some sort of exercise and just make it part of your daily routine, Andrew. And that's it. And then eventually over time, the compounding will take place. It doesn't need to be a severe kind of high impact intensity interval training workout. It could just be walking every day, going to the pool and swimming every day, right? Whatever it is for you, it's just do something. And I think it's the same with teaching, right? And starting your own business. As long as you, as Leo and I always say, as long as you make it or schedule a part of your day around that activity, you're going to see results. It's a matter of fact. If you hold yourself accountable and you show up at that time of day every single day, over time you will get there. And just like personally, and to go back to the original point, you don't know unless you try, right? I always told myself I could never quit drinking, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. I have relapses every once in a while, but I was convinced, I can't give up drinking because I'm going to fail, or if I can't give up drinking because I'm a person who needs to have a drink every Friday, right? But if you commit to it and you do it and you test it out and you just do it, over time, you will assume that identity to the point where you don't want to go back to have a drink on a Friday because it means not enjoying your Saturday mornings and missing out on a full weekend, right? A full 48-hour weekend, right? And again, you don't have to be perfect all the time. I can, you know, I've had relapses, but it's over time. If you look back at my last year, I've drank the least amount of alcohol in my entire adult life, right? And not perfect,
Congratulations.
but it got me closer to a person I wanted to be, right? But I never would have gotten there unless I just experimented and gave it a shot.
And there's supplemental benefits there that you're describing, right? That one action creates corresponding actions, right? Like if I set up a routine that I'm going to work out in the morning before work every day, or not even every day, let's say Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, just hypothetically, right? Guess what happens in the evenings, the days before, when you want to have like a snack before bed, or you want to have a beer, or you want to watch that movie? You're like, oh, no, I can't do that because I'm waking up at 6 o'clock to do my workout. There are other things that end up happening that are good. And then once you get in that, get rolling, you know, that just like you said, Mike, that just becomes who you are. And at first you have to make an active choice, but eventually you just get into the routine. And there are other supplementary actions and choices that come from that first choice.
And just to jump in, Leo, but if we're thinking about teacherpreneurs, one of the biggest hangups a lot of people have is, but I don't feel comfortable posting. Like I don't want to get out on social media, or I'm not comfortable posting on social media. But if you can start that habit of posting, say, X amount of times a week, just starting, it's going to free up all that anxiety and stress you have. It's going to free up all like your mind to just focus on other aspects of your business as well. Because you get through those first 2 weeks and you post, say, twice a week, then you're there's that worry that used to take up part of your brain is gone now. And then you can start to develop a course, or you can start to build other aspects of your business, knowing that you've done this biggest thing, you've done this small thing that was giving you the most anxiety.
I feel like you guys have read the script somewhat, because you have basically jumped into lesson 2 and 3 already, which are the last 2 lessons, actually, before we talk about our personal lessons. But Andrew, can you talk more about the dating? Because I feel like this idea of thinking of something as an experiment, I think it's very much aligned with this notion of dating something. And I was thinking about that the other day when someone asked me, like, oh, so you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life? And I said, no, I'm dating this. I'm dating this field, this new area that I'm kind of like venturing in. So can you tell us more? Maybe the audience would benefit from your dating analogy.
Yeah, for sure. So I think human nature is like what we've been talking about is to be averse to like these binary choices of decisions. Like I do this or I do this, and the consequences are dire, you know, like I drive here, and if I crash, the car crashes and it blows up. But like, it doesn't have to be like that binary choice, right? With niching, which is like the magic word in our industry, but it really just means like a specific type of person that you want to work with. Like really the only wrong decision is not making a decision, right? And it doesn't have to be, you know, what you do forever, right? And I like the analogy of dating because I think it's relatable. Like when you go on a first date with somebody, I'd be surprised if the majority of people go on a first date with the intention of like, oh, this is going to be the person I'm going to date for the rest of my life. Like, no, probably most people go into that coffee date or whatever just to like, oh, I'll find out information about them. We'll just kind of talk, and you know, maybe there will be a second date, maybe they won't, maybe there won't be, but like either way, okay, I'm kind of cool with the outcome, and then we'll go from there. So why does having a niche have to be anything different, right? And this is where we kind of came up with the idea of dating a niche, with the idea that kind of as a catch-22, yes, having a niche is important, but only to an extent. So a lot of, or I want to say all, the majority of, you know, skills that we can learn of having a business, having a teaching business, are transferable to any niche. But the catch is you kind of have to choose one or date one in order to learn those skills and go through the process of putting in the reps to get there, right? So learning about, audience attraction and building an offer and selling an offer and building a course and running a course and getting feedback and building a landing page and getting the messaging right, and all of these things, which are skills that are very important, but are transferable to literally anything that you could possibly offer for the rest of your life. But in order to actually go through that process and learn all those things, you have to be targeting a specific type of person, but you don't have to date them forever.
Oh my God, you're just jumping into lesson 2 now. But because you guys anticipated lesson 3, I think lesson 2 and lesson 3 are kind of connected, because Andrew just brought up lesson 2, which is, in order for you to do that, which is lesson 2, you need to have a unique proposition. You want to have something that only you could do, right? And we talk a lot about this idea that you're not teaching everyone, you are teaching someone, right? And I think this is why you need to make good choices, because by making good choices, you're creating opportunities for yourself. So what do you guys have to say about that?
Yeah,
what is this unique proposition?
I think it's balancing though, isn't it, Leo? So I think it kind of speaks to what Andrew was saying. Like, as teachers, we have these great resources of knowledge and all these materials we've accumulated, these assets, as we like to say, that we bring to the table. And it's really just a matter of choosing a type of student or an aspect of teaching that we really like to teach, and commit to that, put it out there, and date that niche for a while, right? So maybe if you really like teaching speaking skills, oftentimes teachers teach presentations. So maybe you just teach presentation skills, right? And you test it out there. You test that niche. And
you think of it as an experiment.
Think of it as an experiment, right? The opposite of that would be trying to get your niche so perfect without any dating, right? It's like, I can't date yet because I haven't lost enough weight. I can't date yet because I haven't got my haircut, right? You keep
it's like you're just texting a bunch of women, but you've never gone on a date with them, and you've never given them any, you haven't given any of them a chance.
I really want to date you. This is awesome. I'm so glad that you're into my profile. Let's talk in 2 months when I'm ready. Right? Like, no, like let's test it out. Let's experiment for a bit. Let's avoid the paralysis of indecision, right?
Yeah. You familiar with the show Love is Blind? You familiar with that?
We
haven't watched it, but it's very popular.
Yes.
In my circles.
Yeah. So what always happens at the end of the show?
They kiss.
The end of the.
I don't know.
Wait. But that depends. Have you watched the series? Because in the middle they have to meet.
Well, the premise is flawed. Basically,
they get married at the very end. They
either
get married or they don't.
Or they don't, right? And a lot of them walk away and say, "No, I'm not ready. I can't do this."
But without seeing each other,
some of them on the very last day, right? Like on the altar,
because they never get a chance
each other.
Well, at the beginning, yes, at the beginning, the idea is that you can fall in love without seeing somebody.
Put the link in the profile in the comments below.
But they never actually get a chance. They're like, I think it's like over the course of like 6 weeks or something, and then they get married or whatever. But they don't get a chance to actually get to know each other, right? Which is why this is what dating is for. You get to know a person and make a decision and get information and gather information and find out, if you decided sitting on your couch today, I want to get married. And then you go into your first date with somebody with the intention of like, I want to get married. I mean, I think some people do that, but that may not work out the best. You go in with an open mind as an experiment. It's okay. But you put in more reps. If someone doesn't work out for you, go on a date with another person. And I really believe this, like niching is the same thing. Like it's about learning the process and not trying to find something perfect, because you'll always be surprised with what you find. It's not going to be what you think.
Yeah. And this is what it means to have a unique proposition. This applies to your life as well. I'm pretty sure that, Andrew, when you were in the dating world, you kind of knew what your unique proposition was, right?
I don't know
what
you
were looking for. It's a good question. I don't know, but maybe. And I was thinking about
maybe I didn't. That's why I was still dating.
Yeah, but eventually you knew what you wanted.
Yeah,
you figured out what. Because I think that's the essence of wanting to have or having a unique proposition, is figuring out what you are uniquely good at and apply as much leverage
This is
as
scary to
possible.
people too, because a lot of natural responses is like, well, I don't know, I'm not good. Of course you don't at first, like you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And how do you figure it out? By, we always talk about learning by doing. Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't just apply to students, it applies to us as well. Learn by
Yeah.
doing, and having, a corner of the internet for you. Like, I just Googled this. Do you know how many people in the world have access to the internet?
Okay, we have 8 billion people in the world. So how many people have access? I'd say 6 billion.
Yeah, over half, definitely.
5, according to statistics.com. So
5 billion people.
5.03 billion people have access to internet. 4.7 billion people have social media. So my question to everybody is, how many of those 4.7 billion people do you need to sign up to your course to have a thriving business?
Yeah.
Not that many.
Yeah.
You don't need to teach everybody.
This is why you need to have a unique proposition. You need to productize yourself, right? Because we've talked a lot about this. Productizing has this specific knowledge. Productizing has leverage. Yourself has uniqueness. Yourself has accountability. Yourself also has specific knowledge. So what you're doing is you're combining all of these pieces into these two words. And as you said, Andrew, if you're looking at things from a long-term perspective, you need to ask yourself, is this authentic to me? Is it myself that I'm projecting? And then ask yourself, am I productizing this? Am I scaling this? Am I scaling this with labor? Am I scaling this with capital? How am I scaling this? With media, with a course, right? Like, what is this podcast?
That is the question.
That's a very good question. We're literally productizing ourselves with a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically what we're doing, right?
It's an asset.
Yeah.
Right. These are all assets. Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this before, where a lot of people, like teachers, transfer the ESL school experience into a business where they teach live classes, which isn't a bad thing. Like teaching one-to-one, selling your time can be okay. But I like this analogy of like, when you ask people like, okay, so you want to buy a new desk for your office, right? And you go to IKEA and you look at desks at IKEA. And then you also talk to a carpenter about making you a custom desk for your office. Which one of those two things would be more expensive?
Yeah.
The carpenter
Obviously
one.
the custom, right?
Of course, right? Obviously, right? But in our industry, it's reverse. The one-to-one custom lesson is super cheap, generally speaking. It should be the opposite. The one-to-one lessons we should be leveraging. That should be the premium option. I have a course that you can join over here, which is this much. But if you want specific one-to-one attention, it's 3 times as expensive.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we offer the custom desk at an IKEA price.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We offer the custom desk at an IKEA price. Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with IKEA.
No.
Half my house is IKEA.
Love IKEA.
So
I can't afford a custom desk.
Which brings us to the last lesson, because it's connected to all of this. We think of something as an experience. I think the order that I had doesn't work, but it's something always takes longer than you think it's going to take. That was our first lesson. But we also need to know
many of our
what
podcasts can
we know what success looks like. We know that behind mountains are more mountains. That was another lesson. We talked about thinking of something as an experiment, and wanting the lesson that we just looked at was you need to have a unique proposition. But how do we get all of this off the ground? It's connected to what both of you have said. You have to start small. And that's the lesson here. The problem is when you have, and I think a lot of us have this, when we have really high standards, you expect a lot of yourself. And it's very hard to be comfortable with something that is kind of crappy or mediocre or not all the way there, which is what eventually stops you from taking action. But there's a reason, this is a lesson that I've learned, there's a reason why most tech startups think in terms of a minimum viable product. And this is why we think about a minimum viable course, right?
Accelerate to fail. You have that be the mindset. We talk about that in TSN, in our Teacherpreneurs support network. And that's not our idea. We got it from Shark Tank, from Robert Herjavec, who said this in one episode, and it just clicked in my mind, because he said, you have to accelerate, you have to go faster, you have to accelerate to fail. And then he said, what I mean by that is you have to go to market and find out if anyone cares about this idea. And if they don't, throw it in the trash and have a new one. But he said, what would you prefer? to learn quickly that no one cares about this, or spend 2 years of your life doing it and then find out that no one cares about it?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
So with that mindset, there is no failure. It's not
no,
me that fails. I have an idea that nobody cares about. Okay, fine. I'll get another idea. I'll date a different niche. I'll design a different thing. I'll
yes,
come up with something else. The failure isn't you. The failure is just the idea. And that happens all the time.
yeah,
We
Mhm.
only see success stories of successful people. You don't see Elon Musk, all of the failures that he had, and there are lots of them. You don't see Steve Jobs
yeah,
failures. You don't see, but they're there. If you dig, you Google around, you'll find them. But we only
yeah,
celebrate their major successes, and
Mhm.
that's not. I mean, I'll attribute to them, but that's not the whole story.
yeah,
It goes back to what I said earlier. These are not failures. These are all opportunities, right?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, great. If I'm posting about this and I get 10 people following me and I get 5 of them that want to sign up and try my first idea for a course with me, great. Then now I have the opportunity to see if this course is actually really as good as I think it is. And if they give me great reviews, that's great. I have the opportunity to use those reviews and to do what Leo said, I can scale now. And
Mhm.
my own definition of scaling will be different. Versus thinking I have a good idea, worrying about maybe not pleasing everyone, and
Mhm.
therefore not building it and not taking a chance. So it's better to have an idea, test it out, talk to those 5 million people on social media,
Yeah,
see if you can get some of those to sign up. You then have the opportunity to get proof of concept. You have the opportunity to see if what you've created is really good or bad. And then you have the opportunity to start fresh all over again, or to just make those small tweaks that will make it even better the next time you do it. And again, if it is really good, then you can you have the opportunity to think of new ways to scale your business. And I think you're right, Andrew, in the in the Teacherpreneur Support Network, that's exactly what we do, right? We work with teachers who just kind of need that little nudge to kind of
yeah,
help them fail faster or see the opportunities as fast as possible
yeah,
But the
so that they can get
opportunity, yeah,
more opportunities down the road.
we talk about this all the time. Like, the benefit is so huge for language teachers, because it's not like we are lawyers who have an idea for like an awesome mop that will clean your floors without all the hassle. Like, it's a completely unrelated idea. Like,
That's
we've
right.
all
Yeah,
taught students, we've all taught them somewhere, we've all helped them do something. We've all, if I posted about this the other day, if you've taught a general English class, which is not a thing, by the way, it's an invention
Yeah.
by ESL schools, it doesn't exist. But if you've taught that in a school, then you've by nature just taught 12 in-demand skills in that class.
right.
Pick one and go teach it to the same people that need it. So it's not
Yeah.
an unrelated idea. We've all helped people, we've all helped students, we've all helped them get better. As you would say, Leo, productize that system that you used.
yeah,
Go find 10 people that need to learn it and do it, and do it again. It's not like a lawyer making a mop. It's the same thing that we do all the time. You're just finding the people to do it.
Yeah.
yeah,
And the people that are most successful in the Teacher Accelerator program, the ones that are making money faster, are the ones that do that, right?
Yeah.
That get their product out there as fast as possible, get the feedback as fast as possible, and then make a decision to move either, again, productize it again differently, or start fresh and just try that next skill, Andrew, that of those 20 skills that they've learned and have taught in their general English
Yeah.
class, right?
yeah.
But they take action. They fail
Good
as fast
point.
as possible, or they get to they make the most of those opportunities as fast as possible, and then that gives them more opportunities to test other new ideas or to keep going and scale faster. Yeah.
Okay, so this brings us to the last lesson of our podcast, and there's no lesson here. It's an individual lesson. I want you both to think of a lesson, because I feel like these are lessons that we all learned collectively as a company, as friends, as as human beings. Lessons that, again, I hope a lot of the listeners will somewhat learn from these lessons as well and extract some value from this. But I would like to ask you both to think of a lesson that you've learned this year that you hope to internalize, or not to repeat the same mistake in the past. And I'm going to go first while you two are thinking, because I've been thinking a lot about this throughout the episode, and it's related to my life, but it's related to a lot of the things that both you, Mike, and Andrew have said, which is this idea of not making the same mistakes. I have become very aware of that. I'm trying really hard to avoid making the same mistakes. And what I'm doing now is I'm trying to make new mistakes. Because with new mistakes, there are new lessons. And of course, with new lessons, there are going to be new learning opportunities, right? So that's been the lesson for me this year. Don't keep making the same mistakes. Try to make new mistakes. And the second one,
fail better.
Fail again. Right? And the second one, which is also related to everything that we talked about here today, is that about 99% of the time, the right time is right now. And that is something that I've been telling myself a lot lately. 99% of the time, the right time is right now. But we always say, oh, tomorrow, oh, next week, oh, next year. No, the right time is right now. And this is actually prompted by
George Pickering. Remember?
George Pickering, yes. George Pickering talked about that too.
Tomorrow is not a day of the week.
Tomorrow is not a day of the week, yes. It's right now. If you want to start stretching, start now. Do one stretch. Again, consistency before intensity. Start small, become the kind of person who shows up every single day, and then you're building a new identity. Once that identity has been built, then, only then, you can start increasing the intensity. So those are the two lessons for me.
Atomic Habits is right over my shoulder here on the shelf. I mean,
I actually
1%, man.
Somebody stole my copy. Somebody stole my copy, so I bought a new one now. Baby. Yeah, Mike, Andrew, what are your lessons before we wrap this up?
I'll go because mine kind of dovetails. Bingo card.
Bingo.
Bingo.
Inside joke.
From yours actually. No, and I'm gonna get metaphysical here, but I mean it. Oh yeah. So I've been just reading some indigenous stories, and one of the kind of lessons that you can kind of take from these stories is that it's quite important to trust the universe and to listen to the universe. And what I mean by that is, and I think what the teachings try to tell us is that there's this kind of obsession with us and us being on our own little islands. But the truth is, if you kind of put yourself in those positions, Leo, that you were describing, and then the universe will naturally gravitate towards you, right? So perhaps you're a teacher out there right now and you're thinking, wow, I've always kind of wanted to create my own course, but I don't know how to, or I don't really know who I would talk to about that. And all of a sudden you're now listening to this podcast. That's the universe telling you that there are others out there who can help you. And I think as we kind of create these little assets, it's nice for us to kind of pause and to look for opportunities where we can find individuals that are going to help us along the way. Because I think we really do kind of focus a lot on what we need to do and what all the responsibility that falls on us. And we sometimes can go two ways, right? We can shut other things down and say, no, I really need to return to my little isolation booth here and focus on what I'm doing. Or we can look at these little moments that come up in our lives, these little moments of serendipity where we encounter individuals, or we come across a website or a podcast or the Teacherpreneurs Support Network or something. And maybe that's that one little spark that might help lead us to a new change. And I think I've been really kind of, you know me, I'm high strung. Even when I'm calm, I'm high strung, right? And for me, this kind of teaching has been kind of quite crucial. It's really helped me kind of take a breath and think, okay, if I can't do this right now by myself, what's out there? Who's out there in the universe that might be able to help me? And know that that's not weakness. That's actually the universe is there. Use it, right? Use all the energy and all the beautiful forces around you.
Before Andrew jumps in and shares his lesson with us, I actually wanted to say that that's a great lesson, by the way, Mike. And I think the key word for us there is the word trust, because trust really is a practice. It's almost like an art, especially in those moments when it feels like you're working really hard and things just aren't happening.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, like that's the hard part. Like trusting the universe also, I find, because again, we have the word
as
trust,
long as
right?
you do your part, as long as you do
Exactly.
your part, the universe
Exactly.
will be there, right? And I
Yeah.
know it's you know, we
Trust.
say
You
this
get to
about
trust.
karma and whatnot,
Yeah.
but you got to trust the universe that if you put in the hard work and you really commit to something,
Yes,
there are forces, people out there that will find you. Andrew, you've talked about this before, right? Right now, there's someone looking for exactly what you're looking for. I can't remember what the quote was, but I remember us having a conversation about this.
Yeah.
That's the universe at work, right? If you have an idea and you think people would like it, well, guess what? There's probably someone out there right now who's looking for that same idea that you have, that you are trying to help people with. You just need to put it out there. People will find you. Yeah.
And trust requires patience. Trusting the universe requires a lot of patience. And the question I would ask ourselves is, or even you, Mike, or everyone else listening, is what are you doing to cultivate patience? And still finding that you're not getting the results. That is the $1 million question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm just gonna trust the universe, but trust requires patience. Andrew, beautiful, beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful.
I have to
lesson,
follow
yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I guess mine doesn't really dovetail. But I'll get another bingo card for that.
Bingo card. Oh, darn it.
I mean, it's hard to
Pivot.
choose one lesson. You know, we talk a lot about proof of concept in terms of business, but I think it for me, that's one, like, it applies to everything, you know.
Yeah.
It just means proving to yourself that you're capable and you are able to do something. So for me, like, I've never been, quote unquote, like an exercise person, a gym person. I've never been to a gym in my life, you know. But during COVID, like, we were, like, everyone, I was home all the time, and like, I gotta exert some energy or something. So this year, like, I started doing an exercise routine, and it's really hard. And I started doing it in May, and it's been 7 months now. And in May, after the first day, I was like, I walked upstairs, talked to my partner, and I was like, I'm dying, like, I can't do this. And I almost stopped. And now I do it 5 times a week, and it's great. And I'm doing things that I never thought that I really could do. And even like Maya this morning, she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "When did you get so flexible?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know, but it just happened." And that's the compounding, right? That's my proof of concept for myself. And so that's my lesson. It's just, you have to, like, it sucked at the beginning. I hated it, but I knew why I was trying it, and I knew why. I didn't have a result in mind. I just knew that this was something I wanted to do, and the process was good enough for me. And I was proud of myself that I didn't give up after a couple of days, because it would have been very easy to stop and to say, well, this is too extreme for me. I can't do this. I'll try something else. And I'm glad I stuck with it. And that, you know, that applies to anything. So if you're thinking about, if you've been trying to do something or thinking about starting something, whatever that is, just try and start it, because I think you'll be happy with yourself later.
Beautiful. Those are beautiful lessons. Folks, there is 1 month left in the year, and most people, I would say, are ready to coast to the finish line. But one good month, this is based on what Mike said to me earlier. It's like, oh, next year. I was like, no, 1 good month can make the whole year feel like a success. So the question that I would like to leave us pondering for the rest of this podcast and into the new year, 2023, is what can you do in the next 25, 30 days to build momentum and finish the year on a high note? We don't have to answer. I just want you to think about that. Boys, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. What a year. What a podcast episode. Beautiful.
I know, right?
I have one more lesson. Can I share
me
one
the
more?
whole way? All right.
One more. Yeah.
Share one more.
It's part of Dog Me. Now it's officially bottom up, because now the students are contributing and shaping the direction of the class.
Even though I just wrapped the lesson right here with, like, what can you do in the next 30 days to build momentum and finish the year?
But what is a lesson? It's never ending. Right?
It's a never ending thing. Yeah. So go ahead, Andrew. What's the last?
I just want to say it's and this is like going to start cliche, but it's really a thank you letter to everybody. It's the power of people. You know, I think I know we all, and we talked about, like, or I mentioned Steve Jobs and all these successful people, and we don't often see their struggles. And I don't know how people think about us and what we do, but we certainly struggle. I can tell you that. And we have struggled a lot. And I've struggled during COVID. I remember thinking early in 2020 when I lost my job and everything, like lots of people did, and it wasn't a really good place. And, you know, you guys stuck with me and I stuck with you, and we were able to like pull through and do it. And now like the power of people, just helping other people and really having that circle.
Yeah.
And Leo, I know like for like, we live in the same city, but like for a year and a half, we basically didn't see each other.
Yeah.
And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen each other a bunch of times. And I'm just really thankful for that, because it's easy for me to stay home after these 3 years and just, well, it's what it is now.
That's
But
what we do.
every time I go out and I see you or I see somebody else, I remind myself of how powerful it is.
It is.
And
I agree.
30 days from now, it will be 4 years of us, the three of us, sitting around this table and doing this. So just thank you to everyone listening, of course, but to the two of you, like, thank you for 4 years of this, because it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, amen. I think this is a great way to end this podcast. We don't want to shed any tears, but this is it. The power of people, the power of building momentum the next 30 days, the power of trusting the universe, the power of knowing that you should be always making new mistakes, the power of knowing what success looks like, the power of knowing that everything you do should be perceived as an experiment, the power of starting small, the power of knowing that things will take a little bit longer than you think they're going to take, and the power of knowing what success looks like to you, because the way you measure success is unique to you. So I think this is a very good way for us to wrap another year of podcasting here with Teacher Talking Time. And as Andrew said, I think we just want to thank you all for listening, for giving this podcast a try, for being supportive, for sharing, for liking, for leaving reviews, for joining our YouTube channel. And we're very grateful. I think that's one of the reasons why we're still doing this after so long, is because of the power of people too.